Welcome, everyone, to Talking Textiles. I'm Michael Woody, a member of ATA, and I'm also the CEO of Transtex. The goal of this podcast is to get to know the wide variety of positions and markets that make the advanced textiles world turn. We'll be talking to professionals in different roles throughout this series to help inspire the next generation of textile professionals and anyone interested in learning about others' journey in the world of textiles. ATA offers advanced textiles content throughout the year, including the upcoming Outlook Conference taking place June 2nd through the 4th in Green Bay, Wisconsin. This event features a leadership development workshop, business development track, and a government relations update. Please visit textiles.org/events to learn more. On today's episode, the topic is workforce development. Myself, along with Raquel McCarthy, president of NTI Global, and Bill Ackerley, operations manager at Beers USA, will be sharing our own experiences with training and developing our workforce in hopes to inspire you in your own efforts. And now, let's talk textiles. Hi, I'm Michael Woody. Today, myself, Raquel McCarthy, and Bill Ackerley are your featured guests. Welcome to the podcast. What Transtex does is we print on narrow web fabric, and then we assemble that fabric into finished products. So we do things like, well, of course, we custom print it, a full color printing, and then we assemble it into finished products. So lanyards, pet leashes and collars, luggage straps, bag straps, all narrow web fabric. All of it custom printed with full color logos, for example, or sports teams logos. So a lot of what we do is also sewing and a lot of course, hand assembly. Right. So in terms of our workforce development and training, I mean, the training that we do here, we don't truly have advanced manufacturing here at Transtex. The key areas for us in terms of training would be the art and printing area, and then the sewing and hand assembly area. So as far as sewing and hand assembly, we're fortunate that we have a pretty good pipeline to the Dominican community here. So fortunately, a lot of our employees will recommend people if we need them, bring them in. Sometimes it'll be friends, sometimes it'll be family. In terms of training there, it's typically a team leaders will train, or even sometimes somebody that's friendly with the person will train in terms of the sewing and assembly aspect of it. Speed is the real key there. So once someone gets down what to do, it's a question of how fast can they go. Art and printing can be a little more advanced, but we have the Rhode Island School of Design here. So again, lucky because it's not difficult for us to find qualified artists. So I would say in terms of workforce development, for us, location has been given what we do has been important. So I don't know what your situation is, Raquel.
I'm happy to talk about our manufacturing side as well, because I think there's a lot of articles out there talking about how to encourage people and train people on the office side, and there's not a lot for companies like us that we're not curing cancer, but I still need people to want to come to work. So
we're the same way at Beers in Chicago. We do a training. So we're a contract sewing company. So we're basically sewing bags, military gear, plate carriers, athletic equipment. We have a facility here in Chicago, one in Puerto Rico, so I can touch base on training and the ability to find people on both topics on that. So,
well, Bill and Raquel, since you both are involved in sewing, as am I, I'd be curious to hear your take. I mean, I've explained a little bit about what we do, but I'd be curious to hear how that whole sewing and assembly issue plays out at your places in terms of training.
Sure. So with us, we're fortunate enough to do so many different things. It's like we're not a one-stop shop. I make little filtration bags that have just a 10-inch side seam on really lightweight material, and you sew a circle on the bottom. So, and I make 20,000 of those at a time. So for me, that's training on our floor. I can bring somebody in, and when I hire somebody, and you have a Dominican, I have a pretty good feed with Ecuador, and a lot of people coming into Chicago. Where it's funny in a sense, like we opened Puerto Rico because we couldn't find people in Chicago to train and have the ability to build our business. As time has transitioned, Chicago has been very easy to find people. Like I could put a sign out front right now or spread word, I'll have 10 people here tomorrow. Monday to come in. But what I don't look for in what we do differently in Chicago versus the general manager in Puerto Rico is I like to train people that have like a dexterity drill. I like to see people with a little bit of energy and a little bit of being able just to handle it and not be nervous right off the bat. Somebody that looks comfortable. Uh, those people I feel like I can train up to be some of our top operators over the years, and we have. But we bring them in. We start them with really easy operations. Once they excel at that quality and quantity, then we step them up the line to additional, more difficult operations, and that's our training process after in Chicago. In Puerto Rico, they have a little bit more tunnel vision, which is sometimes not great. Like, and not just our management team, but the workforce there comes in like, I'm a safety stitcher, or I'm a tacker, or I'm a binder. And they come in and that's all they want to do. And they feel like you're not utilizing their talents or you're disrespecting them if you put them on something else. Where we just broad train everybody in our floor so that we can mix things and have a very diverse floor where I can put different people on different operations.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're having people that can move around and not
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Super. I mean, there was a speed bump in that for sure when we cross train people because you're trying to get people to know so many different things. And not everybody can do it. I mean, if we're being realistic, everybody can't do that. But we have a good amount of people on our floor that can bind, can safety stitch, can work on more difficult backpacks and still sew really fast on a filtration bag. And there's some people that can do all the speed in the world, but I give them something a little bit complicated and they're completely lost.
Yeah.
So it's just finding the mix on the floor and finding out when you train these people.
So how do you deal with the language issue from a training standpoint? I mean, we again, our team leaders are from the Dominican community, so the language issue is not a problem.
Right. Same
situation.
Same situation. But my team leaders and actual production managers on the floor are from Mexico. So they're all bilingual. There's 3 of them. So it really makes it simple, really. And I understand Spanish. I think I'd like to say I understand Spanish. I don't speak it very well, but I feel like I've got a good understanding when somebody's talking or asking a question.
I feel your pain when I go out on the production floor and try to speak Spanish. They usually say, please, English, not Spanish.
Right.
So we have a bit of I guess we're unique out of that in that for us, we don't have a strong demographic that has sewing background in both of our facilities. So we have a facility in upstate New York and then another just north of Dallas. And so for us to overcome that, we found that number one, when you're recruiting for people, we do not list job openings as sewing positions because you immediately isolate an entire demographic or pool of candidates because when they hear sewing, they think of their grandmother or their mother making curtains and dresses.
Right.
So we list our job openings as manufacturing operators or machine operators. And then we also found, kind of like what you spoke to, Bill, that you're going to get people who come in and they are very afraid of these sewing machines. Because number one, they're not the little tabletops, right? Where you're hemming a skirt. They're cylinder beds, they're flat beds, they're large machines. So we actually have found that doing job fairs for us, we will list it. We'll have 1 to 2 straight days and we bring people in, they fill out these sheets, obviously the shifts that they're looking for, things like that. Can they lift or do they need to sit? And then we do factory tours during these jobs. So we bring them around to every single station and we have the team leads who do that will watch them. And if someone immediately, you bring them over to a cylinder bed and they step back, well, okay, maybe this is not for them. So from getting them in the door right away and seeing sort of their appetite or aptitude, if you will, for certain types of machines, that's what we have to start with. And then we actually start operators, if you will, bar tack, then flatbed, then cylinder bed, things where you have to have more dexterity and more control over it. So bar tacking is an easy one, right? Like if you're afraid of a bar tacker, you can't be in sewing.
Right.
So we've definitely found as well that younger generation coming in is what we're working with. And manufacturing is already not necessarily a very Instagram world. So instead, we have worked on trying to make our shop floor control more staff friendly in that they can see where they are, how much more output they need to hit their next rank up. So we have every single sewing position has 4 ranks. So they all come in at a bronze and then they go up to silver, gold, and platinum. And so that's based on QC, safety, and output for every single position.
Excellent. Excellent.
And that is a language void, is what we call it, by the way, because y'all talked about having to have that, because we do have different populations in our New York facility. We do have more Puerto Rican, but we also have Guyanese and Afghani. And down in Dallas, we have a big mix. And so for that, all of our training, we try to make it's all photo and video.
Okay.
So no language. Everything can be taught just by looking at the screens.
That's
Well,
fantastic.
that sounds like a bigger challenge than what Bill and I.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill, you and I are, I think, drawing from a particular community, so
Right.
there's a homogeneity about
Yeah.
that. Recall, you're dealing with people from different languages, different parts, and you're not. I mean, I get a lot of referrals here. I think Bill probably has the same thing happen, but you really have to drum up interest.
It's been a unique challenge. We've had factories before. We used to have a factory in Salt Lake City, one in Paducah, Kentucky as well. And especially our Salt Lake City facility, we used to get a lot more people that were coming up that had experience sewing. We thought we were going to find that when we opened our Dallas facility about 5 years ago, and it just didn't really materialize. Or as I think one of you mentioned, you get people who come in who go, oh, well, I only know how to lock stitch, right? Or I can only operate on a flatbed. And they weren't able to translate that skill set over because, as well, they're used to sewing bed sheets. And here I'm asking them to sew an 18-ounce two-side coated vinyl, put some webbing on it. And oh, by the way, you need to sew that in a circle. And as all of us here knows, sewing in a circle is one of the hardest things you can teach people.
We have a company here, Colonial Mills, that manufactures braided rugs, and that's exactly what they do. And they have this. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. It's like this huge table, 30 yards by 30 yards, and air comes up through these holes, and it holds the rug up so that it's easy for them to twist the rug around. And so
Okay.
it's fascinating.
That's amazing. I think another thing, like we can all probably agree on, today's day and age, it's easier to train people too, because you can adjust the speed on some of these machines. So back when I started here, it was old Singer 241 sewing machine, and you hit the paddle and it just took off. But nowadays we can slow everything down, which is a great training aspect as well.
Yeah.
The thread break sensors. I mean, for us, I think the last 5 really, but in the last 10 years, the improvements on sewing machines has greatly impacted our ability to bring someone in who never thought that they could sew, who never even looked at it as a career. And like you said, now it's okay, thread break sensor, the machine stops on its own, right? Like we have all of these abilities to go through, and they are actually attending, and which is the next phase that we're headed into, which is actually having attendants, not necessarily operators.
Okay.
I think that's where technology is taking our company, because as we're all sitting here saying, we also know it's very hard to get someone to see things sometimes as a career in sewing. And it's such an odd thing because we used to do plastic extrusion, and no one has a problem going, I'm a plastic extrusion operator. That's great. But saying, oh, well, I'm an industrial sewer.
It's not attractive.
No, it's just not Instagram friendly yet. We will find it one day.
Yeah.
And that's our like litmus test is we realize that we have to get people excited. So the other thing is we will bring people in, how they talk about the younger generations, not to generalize. They want to know why. Why are they coming to work? What's the impact? We've tried to replace that with what? What are they producing? And so we have our sales team, every week we have word on the street. And so our marketing and sales team sends in either something that happened on LinkedIn where our product would be used, or a cool thing. So some of our products was used at a Tesla factory. And so that gets sent out to our factories. And so they can see that what you have made is being used out there. And we try to send them the cool stuff. Nobody really cares about the small things, right? But that's where we've tried to engage staff more so that they realize it is a career. We're celebrating 42 years in business next year. And we've had some staff that have been with us for almost that entire time. But yeah, that's the only way we found to get that younger generation in is, hey, look at this. Like Justin Bieber used it on stage.
It's funny you mentioned that because I don't do enough of that recall. I don't do enough of that in terms of telling folks what we're making, how it's being used. And we did a guitar strap for Daryl's house, the show Daryl Hall does, and he brings in guest musicians all the time. And I found a photo of him with that guitar strap on and playing. And when I showed it around, people really got a kick out of it. But I need to do more of that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we do that a little bit too. We do a lot of military gear. So there was a picture of a soldier, and it was a few years back, it might have been Afghanistan or something, but pulling a baby out of like this rubbish the soldier had the baby, and it had all the rig from the customer that we make the rigs for, and all the stuff. So when we do that, we see that we put big pictures up on the wall and show people. I mean, and they're throughout the factory and throughout the offices of these kind of things happen because of the work that you do, and minimize it a little bit to Rogue Fitness is one of our biggest customers. And so they do the CrossFit games, and you can get pictures of all that stuff and bring that out for the athletic equipment. So they see like, yeah, it's this life-saving equipment, but it's also this healthy fitness equipment that people can use every day. So
Yeah, the other thing we've done to try and connect office to factory, if you will, that thought process, is our salespeople go through training on the factory floor. So they spend an entire day there, or sometimes 2 days, and they get trained by those operators. So it instills that confidence in the operators as well, to be like, oh, well, I got to train, the sales staff. And then at the end, they make a finished product and it looks terrible and everyone gets to laugh about it. And I think that actually makes it even better. And it reminds those operators as well. So,
you mentioned something, recall that's a concern for me. For us, with the workforce aging out, and my concern is we can't train people who don't want to do the job. So getting people interested in the job is such a difficult thing for us. We're fortunate because we have those groups of folks that refer their friends and family, but I worry about the time when that's not possible. And I've gotta find people and train them who can't train somebody who doesn't want the job. And I think that's an issue with the textile companies, the textile industry in general.
yeah. Well, I know that a couple of customers that we have in North Carolina, they really have a hard time bringing people in and finding people that want to train. And like you're saying, Michael's want the job, want to be part of the sewing industry. So yeah, it's funny when I talk to these people, like you and I are very fortunate right now, but that day is going to come to an end, and that pipeline is going to stop. And what do we do then? Because for me, it's been so easy to bring people in that one day it's going to be a struggle, but the demographics are also changing. So I think that as those demographics are changing and we're incorporating the people from Dominican and Ecuador and Mexico in our communities, I think that that's just going to continue. Their children are going to, if we can make this a good paying job and an attractive position and make them feel like they're part of a bigger process and a bigger team, I think we can continue that feed for many years to come.
Yeah, for us, our opening the factory in Dallas was, we thought incorrectly, despite doing the market research and talking to people, that Dallas, this is going to be no problem. And we found it to be much more challenging. And then, of course, COVID hit as well shortly thereafter. The big change that we have found with recruiting and getting people to view the position with us as a career and not a job was, I think we went to full pay transparency on our factory floors. And what I mean by that is when they start, there is a sheet and it shows the position and the rank and how much that starts off at. And then if you can bar tack and you can work on the flatbed, then you can get to this. And so they can see all the way out to making up to $32 an hour on certain skill sets. And then the flip side to that, and you touched on it, was pay. For a long time, as American manufacturers, we had low wages. We were able to have a very large pool to pull from. And just since my tenure of running NTI, I think when I started, our average pay at our New York facility was around $8.75 an hour. We are more than double that now, just starting. And then benefits. We offer 75% paid health insurance no matter what plan, family, employee, employee plus one, and then PTO, mental health, things like that. As business owners, we have to start realizing that if we want to have career-minded staff, we have to offer career-level compensation. And it's not easy, and I totally understand it. And it's a full line of thought process that has to change, just like the people who say, I want to buy made in American, but I won't pay that much for my jeans.
And that's the problem we deal with a little bit. And you probably can relate to in New York. Chicago is very difficult to do business in. I mean, because we can only charge our customer. At the end of the day, our customers are only going to pay so much for a backpack. They can find it cheaper in California, some areas, in Kansas and Kentucky. I mean, we're at a competitive disadvantage, so we have to rely on quality and customer service, and that's how we sell our business now. So yeah, so as far as pay, we're charging our customers more, but as long as we continue, and that's the other part of this workforce development, not only are we bringing people in here, we have to train them to be high quality, high reliable individuals, because as people don't show up for work and they're not consistent, it can throw a whole line out of whack really quickly. So yeah, it's not always easy to balance that. Yeah, I want to pay everybody $32 an hour too, but can I get that money back at the end of the day when I charge my customer? The answer is no. So,
Bill, that made me think of an issue that I'm currently experiencing, and I'm curious if you folks are experiencing the same thing. We occasionally, because we do a lot of large size orders, we will have peaks and valleys in our business cycle. And so we just finished this very big order for the Navy. We're going into a slow period now in December. It's going to ramp back up again like a hockey stick in February. But I'm going to have 6 weeks that I've now got to figure out. You want to keep the folks if you can, obviously.
right.
But also with the margins being what they are, I mean, we compete with China every day.
Yeah.
So the margins being what they are, we can't afford to have people sitting around either. So I don't know if you folks ever have those peaks and valleys and how you deal with that.
Yeah, we do. We have same setup. We usually get a little ramped up here because of a lot of our customers do a lot of Black Friday specials, so they'll jump up a little bit. And then right after Christmas, we're down I would say till February, March as well. But I have a large part of my workforce coming in through temp agency that I have a very close relationship with. So that helps us on unemployment. I'm not laying people off. I'm not trying to, and it's a commitment, because the people that are temps are employed, and for all practical purposes, they're here every day for months and years at a time. But if I do have that peak, they understand, and they're 90% of them will. If I have to send them home for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, they're ready. They're like, just call me when I come back. I love working here, because you make that environment so friendly and so welcoming that they're like, no, I can go get another job somewhere else for a month, but I want to be back there when you're ready for me. That really helps us in the sense of keeping those ebbs and flows, not hurting us so much, and then not hurting the people either.
So you've got the temporary workforce situation, plus, of course, the corporate culture is big.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, exactly. And we have, so in Chicago, I think we're sitting at about 75 or 80 people right now. I would say 45 of them are Beers employees. The rest are temps. So we have a stable structure of employees here that don't go, but the rest are in and out as needed.
How about you, Recall? Same. Do you have those peaks and valleys?
Not so much on our production side. We have periods where we're building stock. So we'll build stock. We do our own distribution as well. So we will build stock, but when we have slower periods, or for example, we're gonna have like during COVID material delays, we would slow machines down and cross train. So it'd be like, all right, for the next 3 weeks, you're not allowed to work on a machine that you've already trained on, forcing the cross training. And the other thing that I've almost always found is whenever you give the option of taking longer weekends, all of a sudden the factory, nobody's there on Friday.
Right.
So sometimes giving the option before you do a mandatory hour reduction, lets everybody feel like they have a say in it as well.
Yeah, we're in the same situation as Bill. We don't build to stock because everything we make is event related. It's for a specific event or specific launch. So it's if we were I think if we had more of a retail oriented business, we might be able to do that. So that's a challenge for us, certainly.
Yeah, it certainly is. We're fortunate. Some of our customers do build a stock, so we don't always get these huge dips, but they happen. I mean, just like any business. So we just got to work through that and see how it goes from time to time.
What do you think y'all's biggest challenges right now? Like if you just had to pick one out of the hat when it comes to looking at your manufacturing side?
It is cost. It really is cost at this point. It's a struggle because we do push a lot of product through our production lines every day, every week, every month. And sometimes at the end of a quarter, you're just like, we need to do better. And how do we do better? How do we make it more efficient? We buy the new equipment. We invest in cutting machines. We invest in new tackers, and we invested. But what we just recently did was put a shop. We have a shop floor program where I have a huge touchscreen board in my production office, and every machine operator has a tablet right by their machine. So it's on time so I can see bottlenecks, and those slowdowns, which used to cost us a lot of money, and you really didn't know it until it was there when you were just manually doing it. Now you see it coming. So if you can get ahead of those bottlenecks and keep everything a little bit more efficient, you definitely see that at the end of the quarter, end of the year, to save those money. But my biggest concern is always pricing and making sure we're priced the right way, and how much can I get for the, do I ask the customer for a price increase? Because maybe they're expecting it, but they're not going to ask for it. But so do I say we're going to go up $1.20 on this item? Most of the time they're very welcoming to it. Sometimes they're not, but it's that, should I ask, should I not ask? Where do we go with this? Do I finish out this next contract and then say the next one's going to be a little bit higher? So those are my biggest things. The workforce and people coming in here really does not stress me out at all. Fortunately right now, it did in the years past.
Yeah, for us, I would say the key issue, I mean, we're competing with China, but our prices are nowhere near as low as China. However, we turn things around really quickly.
Right.
So that provides us a certain degree of insulation. So it's the peaks and valleys for us because we have a very solid base of business that we know it's going to be consistent, but then we get a very large order that kind of throws us off kilter in a good way, because now we've got to ramp up, but then that order is finished. And if there's another big order not behind it, that's when we have the challenge. So the peaks and valleys for us, and that creates training issues because you're hoping that once that next big order comes in, that you can get some of those folks back.
Right.
So with your shop floor control, Bill, that was a game changer for us when we instituted it, and the metrics and data. So that's how we built our ranking system. So for example, okay, if you're a gold operator, you have to be able to change out your bobbins in X amount of minutes. And you have to be able to change out your thread in this period. And so we really drove to our workforce, if you have the ability to make X amount of dollars, you have to gain confidence and you have to gain speed. And then on top of that, every foundation is on QC. You can't have so many QC fails within X amount of hours, but the shop floor controls is incredible. And from a sewing operation, it's changed the way that we were able to run our factory.
Yeah, I like that. I've never thought about that timing of bobbins and needles and just transition to a new bobbin, new needle or whatever, but machine maintenance by the sewer on a time basis. I love that. That's a great idea. That might be something I implement Monday morning. That's just something to work with, because you're right, because that becomes their break, their semi break, really. If their bobbin's out, oh, we got to wind the bobbin. Hey, how you doing? Oh, so there's the conversations that start to happen. So yeah, I love that. That's a great idea. That's amazing.
Yeah. So on our tablets, they don't just log every time they complete an item. They log thread change, needle break, material change, and all of that metrics are captured on every machine.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like game changing because I'm a data person. I thrive in data. And it also honestly showed us, okay, so many of our operators in New York, they can change that bobbin real quick. Well, they've been here for 15 years.
Right.
And our operators in Texas, they're taking 20 minutes to change a bobbin. No. Yeah. And so that's where we learned where we were failing them on their training, because especially for those of us that have been around sewing machines, oh, okay, yeah, go change the bobbin. So yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you offline and really like geek out about that if you want.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I would like that for sure. Yeah, because we just do a general punch on machine trouble. And whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they're on trouble. So there's really no policing that or monitoring that at all. So
and we have a maintenance software where they go, and so then honestly it gets flagged as down, so that'll pop up on your screen, so you'll know that machine's down. And then our maintenance is tied to each machine, and so then if the same machine keeps having issues, that throws a flag and we can swap out heads, because obviously that machine is having an issue.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation about
yeah, exactly. Another podcast.
Yeah, but it has helped our team from a workforce side because we used to get operators in and it would just say, "Oh, that guy's not working out," right? Well, it turned out actually maybe the machine was having issues.
Right.
And so you also, as I'm sure y'all have this on your factory as well, nobody likes to work on that machine. That machine's the bad machine. And you're like, there's no bad machine. So we found that we were able to better serve our staff by understanding our machinery even better. And even though we've been doing it for 40 years and we thought we knew everything, we were really surprised by some of the data that we got back. And our staff was really happy because then we started training them. Here's tricks on threading your sewing lines. Here's an easier way to know when your needles are aligned, things like that. So we spent a good like 2.5 years really building out our training and our shop floor control.
Well, you said you had 4 standards of pay. So are they just getting a flat pay? Is there a bonus potential, or is it just a flat hourly pay for your employees?
Sure. So they come in and we expect them to rank up, is what we call it, within 90 days. If you haven't ranked up within 90 days, you're probably not going to be here. Each rank up gets an additional bump in pay.
Okay.
Basically. And then each machine segment also has additional pay. So you could be a gold here and a platinum here. And then on top of that, we do a company performance bonus. And then that's pretty much it. We used to do a lot more bonus-based pay, but we also surveyed our staff. And for the most part, they would just rather have a higher base pay.
Okay. And that was my leading next question was, how do they go? Like when I bring somebody in, I tell them, because what we do, minimum wage in Chicago is $16.40 an hour or something like that. So we bring everybody in, new employees, and it's just that minimum wage. But from day one, if they're a high level sewing machine operator, they can make bonus on piece rate right away. And we try to really, even if we're not priced to sell the item at a certain piece rate, we still try to set those rates so there's at least some incentive to work harder and get a little bit of bonus. So, I mean, I have people working, like you said, up to $28, $29 an hour on piece rate, which is good. But I was wondering how it, for you, like if it, let's just use 20, 22, 24, $26 an hour. Do they like that more and they're okay not having that ability to make the bonus? Because I've thought about changing the piece rate in our facility a little bit and seeing how we do that without losing the motivation to continue to be an efficient worker.
One of the things that I think they like is, so on their tablets, they have like a tachometer, green, yellow, red. And so they have three that they have to hit. One is output, QC, and break time, I think it might be. And so long as they stay on that, and it gives them a progress bar to hitting that next rank up. And so then as soon as they hit the rank up, they schedule a meeting, they go and they can meet with HR and their supervisor. The thing about that is that's an increase in base wage. So it's so long as you maintain your rank, your output, you keep that. So instead of doing piece rate, you talked about, okay, when things get slow or something like that, they know that they can still come in and they're still going to get paid. Even if we're slow, their rank, if we go, hey, we're slowing the machines down, we're going to do some training or something like that, they're still making that base hourly rate. They really like that. Additionally, the higher rank gives you preferential treatment for OT.
Okay.
So it gives them that incentive. And it's been great for us to be able to bring someone and say, listen, you're going to start off at $20 an hour. But we've had people who have ranked up from bronze to, I think, gold or platinum within like 16 or 18 months.
Oh, well, great. Okay.
So, and it benefits us because obviously one platinum operator far exceeds the ability of entry level. So
Right.
we haven't had issues. We do have some additional like performance-based bonus, like we do military contracting, some very specialty work. And so those operators get an additional deviation.
Okay.
But they've really liked it, I think primarily because versus the piece rate, like so for example, some of the staff we had that came in that are used to sewing like bed sheets and skirts, they're used to piece rate. So the problem is when the company gets slow or say like they're sick, they're having an off week, they weren't able to still have that base income.
Right.
So they liked that.
How do you pay your employees, Michael?
It's almost identical to yours, Bill, almost identical. That's why it was so interesting to hear what Recall's doing, because it sounds like some things that I can learn on that level. We do almost exactly the same thing you described.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to get y'all our sheet so that you can see how we break those out. For example, like our flatbeds, right? They have different compensation levels because your flatbed, it's more maneuvering and doing certain and speed, let's be honest, right? I mean,
How do you train your trainers? So and pay your trainers when you bring somebody in off in that bronze level, obviously somebody's sitting down with them and working with them and teaching them how to do it. Do you train your trainers or you just have a pool of people that you can go to with different operations?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something we're still, I don't want to say struggling with, but it's a unique individual that knows how to sew very fast and also explain to others how to do that.
Right, right,
So for some of us, we have just people who have been sewing for 20 years and they know how to do it. But what we have started is we realized that going from bar tacking and then going to the next station over, people build their own confidence. And so a lot of our people who we now use to train, they have gone through that process and they know what it's like to have never sewn a day in your life.
right.
They're actually sometimes better trainers than our 20-year veterans.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's what we're finding. And then also, we don't have just one person necessarily. We do almost like by station.
Okay.
Because again, so hard to find someone that can explain what's the difference between threading a flatbed versus threading your cylinder bed. Totally different. So yeah, so it depends, I guess, on like also if you're going to really cross train everybody, we do basic training across the machines. And then this is what they really have an aptitude for. This is your machine. And we encourage them to rank as high as they can on that machine before you start training over onto others.
Right. There you have a baseline, obviously. Yeah, for sure. And when I say we cross train everybody, we do, but there's those certain machines that you have two or three people that can, in the 30 years I've been here, that we're good at it. A three needle chain lap felt seam is just not something everybody can do. I mean, but for the most part, like your simple flatbeds, those are where and in tacking is where I do a lot of cross training. So
Yeah, if somebody can't bar tack,
yeah, yeah.
we
Bye.
found them.
Yeah, yeah. Some people get nervous on bar tackers right away, like because they're so like just the clamp down and it goes so fast. So I started them on just turning the speed all the way down, and once they get like that first 100 or so pieces out of under their belt, it's like the confidence just soars, and that goes back to seeing somebody walk in with confidence. If they walk in and they're just looking like they're scared to death to be there, it's probably not going to be a good fit right off the bat. But if they're eager and I want to work, I can learn anything. Those are the people I'm like, I'm in, I'm on board with this one. Even if I don't have something for them to do and I don't need to hire, I don't let them go because those are the people that really are your foundational pieces on the floor 5 years from now.
We have it's corny, but we really do encourage hire for attitude, train for skill, because the number of people that walk in that know how to sew what we're sewing, I mean, it's few and farther between.
I'm stealing that line, just so you know. I love
Yeah.
it.
Here in Rhode Island, we have, it's called the Rhode Island Textile Innovation Network. So it's an affiliation of companies, and I'm involved in that. And we've tried a lot of training programs working through our MEP, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and tried to put together training programs geared toward textile companies. And the challenge that I've found, and I don't know if you've ever tried to get involved with government training programs, but the problem that we found is that every company needs different types of skills. So to put together a generic training program for textiles, it's just tough. I don't know if you've encountered similar things or not.
Actually, we're just going through that right now. And I might have this wrong, but it's NIMS, and I think it's National Institute of Manufacturing something, but it's a national thing. And what they do is they teach you how to weld, and you get a certificate. They teach you how to use a lathe, and you get a certificate. So I'm trying to work with them now on creating a sewing or manufacturing, get a sewing branch to that. So there's at least a standard out there on how to teach people, so they know like a certificate they can take anywhere. They could be in Chicago, work for beers, and then they end up moving to Rhode Island. Hey, there's my sewing certificate. I've been trained. I know how to do this. You're going to be all over getting that person. So I'm actually just started, and actually Cook County, which is the county for Chicago, is paying for some of this training and setup. So so I'm just learning about the new initiative right now. So it's all literally in the last 10 days that this has come up. So I'm hoping to have more information on that as we go down the road. But yeah, so to your point, there is something going on here in Illinois, in Cook County.
perhaps not as philanthropic as y'all. We tried to get with our local community college in Texas. And just in case they're listening, Grayson County is amazing. Y'all are fantastic. And that's where we are in Texas. They really are a great group there. We tried to get with the Grayson Community College, and they are just opening up a whole manufacturing training, hands-on. They do PLC training. They have fantastic. So we said, let us send you a sewing machine and get it in. The problem is Texas Instruments, and there's a big wafer plant going in down near us. And if you bring a bunch of 18-year-olds into a room and you go, hey, do you want to be involved in this really cool technology? And oh, by the way, there's a sewing machine.
Oh.
So we've faced some headwinds. I honestly don't have an answer for this one. I don't, because at the end of the day, I think we have to sell our companies. It's the same reason why somebody applies to Target over Walmart, right? You're still stocking shelves, but Target has really sold that they're this higher brand, right? It's Target. But I feel like that's how we are when our company goes to these job fairs. You've got all these, the police are set up across from us, and they've got the canine dog. Who doesn't want to spend your life with a dog, right? And here we are like, how do you feel about sewing? Does vinyl excite you?
Yeah.
We haven't found that Instagram thing yet.
Yeah, it's definitely not a shiny surface. That's for sure.
And most of the government stuff that we found is very geared towards clean room training and all that. So
We do have a program that was just launched here, and the jury's still out, but it started actually from the textile companies. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from here in Rhode Island was able to secure $300,000 in funding for a training program that we call Skills Bridge here in Rhode Island. It actually will reimburse a company up to $17,000 and this is more for like aging out. If you've got people running equipment and they're aging out, they're retiring, it actually reimburse the company up to $17,000 to have that retired person or retiring person train their replacement. So it's because as you can't put two people on the same machine and still stay profitable. So this helps to offset some of the cost of that. And it was just launched only a few weeks ago. So the jury's still out, but it seems like a possible solution to some, particularly in advanced manufacturing areas, I think, or companies where there's complicated equipment that needs to be run. I'm not sure how important it is to the sewing area and hand assembly area. That I'm not sure.
what I would like to see for us is more either government funding or school funding, is that crossover. I don't think enough textile companies look outside of the textile industry. There is so much advancement and automation and crossover, the capabilities from different sectors, plastics, metalwork even, that we could institute that would have greater output or semi-automated types of things for our factories. And I think that on top of training people, we need as an industry to start looking outside of our industry for solutions.
Right.
I think that's where we have really seen it's reduced the pressure on us, should I say, from a staffing standpoint by increasing our automation and looking inwards on where are the places that we can improve to not have to increase labor. So if there were government opportunities that way, I would be thrilled to work with the Grayson County people to work on the automations rather than teaching someone to sew.
So I will say one part of our business that I think is flashy when you say sewing and it's like hasn't gotten Instagram worthy yet. We do a lot of laser cutting now, and we do a lot of Gerber cutting and autometrics. And when you bring people in and you hire these designers, they just absolutely love that part of it. So if we could, so that flash is starting to come into the business with the new automation, like to your point, with the laser cutting and the all the different software programs that you Patternsmith, Cutworks Design. The laser cutter one is the simplest one, and it's skipping my mind right now, type of software. They love it, and they can go bounce around on different machines, different programs to design patterns. So if we continue to start letting that automation even flow into the sewing floor, I mean, a sewing machine is a sewing machine, I get it. But once you get those tacks and automated, so it does change a little bit, and it does make it more of a manufacturing job rather than just, here, I'm a sewing machine operator. So we keep moving in that direction. I think it's going to help our cause as well.
Yeah, I think it's that age-old title, right? Like I said, we don't have sewing machine operators anymore. We have attendants and things like that. And we just dropped sewing. And
Right.
just by doing that, there was a total change in number of applicants. And then also people who they're happy to say, oh, well, I work in manufacturing. I'm a machine attendant.
Right. Right. And I think we need to remember too, as far as looking for resources, in the workforce development committee has many resources if you go onto ATA website. So something to go back to as well.
One thing a couple things I wanted to go back to, because we're just about to time out pretty soon. We here in Rhode Island have had a lot of success teaming up with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. It's called Polaris MEP. That's been helpful to us in terms of, and every state has one. Every state has an MEP. And now we're a tight-knit group here. It's a small state, so it's probably a little less complicated for us than it is in Texas or Illinois. But we found that Manufacturing Extension Partnership to be a very useful resource. And I also wanted to go back to I thought, Bill, you made an excellent point earlier in terms of retaining people, that it's not always totally about the money.
Right.
That corporate culture is, and recall, you made a similar point, that it's corporate culture and how people feel working there also can be a very positive force in terms of retention.
Right. Yeah, there's something about going to work and knowing you have to work, but enjoying the day to a certain extent and enjoying the people you work with. Yeah, I'm the operations manager here, but I'm out on the floor every day, a lot, and I'm giving people a hard time, joking with them, making it feel like it's a family environment. And the more I do that, the more people come. You see the smiles out on the floor. I go out there, they know I'm up to something if I go out there and I'm ready to give somebody a little bit of grief, but they also respect that. So when that changes and somebody needs to, hey, we got to do it, they know that when I'm being serious, there's a reason for it, because they know that I'm usually not. I'm usually fun and trying to make everybody feel good every day. So when I'm serious, they understand that. So it's a really good balance of family balance. It appears anyway.
And so tying that back to those rank ups, whenever we do a rank up, it gets acknowledged at both companies, digitally gets sent out also to the office staff. And then level of rank up, I think at like gold, you get to pick the lunch for the factory. Like that also, so like at each rank up, they get things as well. And again, I'll send that to y'all afterwards as well. But it's like also this recognition. Everybody's, oh, he's a gold operator on that machine. And everybody gets to celebrate it. So there is definitely the culture that you build around all that. I agree. And it's super important.
Yeah. Agreed.
I remember very early in my career, I had a job, and one day I drove up into the parking lot, and when I shut off the ignition, I realized I really didn't want to go in. And I think if we can prevent that, if we can prevent people who work with us from having that feeling, I think we'll build a better company.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of ATA Talking Textiles. ATA is a not-for-profit association representing the International Specialty Fabrics Marketplace. Learn more about the events, workshops, and webinars ATA hosts throughout the year at textiles.org/events.